Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Singularity Lab. We've got an amazing show for you today. I'm so excited. Thank you guys for showing up. And for those of you in the chat, we've got an awesome guest for you. We're running a little behind with Luis. He'll actually be in just a few minutes, but I just want to welcome everyone. Greg, great to see you. Charles, Hairless Primate, excellent. Night Gazer, Constellation Fleet. It's amazing to have you all in the chat today. We've got a lot to share with you, and I'm really excited because we've got an amazing guest. So let me go ahead and bring in my co-host here, Kristen Mataluni. Kristen, how are you today? Good. It's great to have you, and maybe just a little bit closer there.
Or a little bit closer.
Yeah, that's better. Awesome. Well, congratulations on being here. We've got an amazing show. We've got Dr. Massimo Teodorani here with us today. I'm Italian, but I still will have a little trouble. He's an astrophysicist and a best-selling author from the National Institute of Astrophysics of Italy. He's also been scientifically investigating recurrent objects in Norway's Hessdalen Valley for decades. I'm so excited to have him here today. Dr. Teodorani, welcome. How are you?
I'm well, and thank you for this kind of invitation.
Yeah, it's great to have you.
I'm seeing your show, which I enjoy very much, the way in which you trigger people, very stimulating. So I'm very happy to be here.
Well, it's wonderful to have you, and we really appreciate you taking the time to be with us. You've got an extraordinary amount of research and time that you've put into this project, and I'd love to start by just getting your personal experience, how you got involved in the project in Norway, and what drove you into doing this.
Yeah, well, it's very trivial because it was 1992 and I just finished my PhD, and I was in a free market somewhere in Modena here in North Italy, and I found a book about UFOs by a good UFO researcher with critical thinking, Jenny Randles, and this book was Science and the UFOs. By chance, I found that book, which fell on my feet. And when I took the book, in that page, there was an appendix which was speaking about Project Hesdalen, which I didn't know at all so far. So it was interesting because I have been collecting and then gave away thousands of UFO books. I was bored by them. Those stories were boring me completely. And really, it was really very boring. I cannot make a generalization because I know that in this field, among ufologists, there are also good investigators, as well as in my field, there are bad investigators. So
right.
It's a question we have to be, right. And at some point I told, why not? After all, the phenomenon is something that produces light and electromagnetic radiation. So it can be studied using the same techniques that we use in astrophysics, because what we are doing, the physical laws that we are deducing are coming from the photons that we are able to collect using multi-wavelength instruments, named optical telescopes, infrared telescopes, radio telescope, X-rays, and gamma ray telescopes. So the same physics can be applied, namely studying the radiation, studying how the radiation occurs, how the radiation varies in time and in space. We can potentially find some physical laws regarding this phenomenon. So this was not boring. It was very motivating. The only difference was, the bad news is that These phenomena are not predictable like astronomical objects, in the sense that we already know the coordinates where we can point our telescopes, so we already know that. In this case, we don't know, but there are places in the world, and I've been cataloging at least 35, maybe 50, which where the phenomenon is occurring very often. So in that way, these places can work like a natural laboratory where we can put off-the-shelf, simple instrumentations in order to try to collect data. That was attempted, but first of all, by Project Hesdalen. And Project Hesdalen is Assistant Professor Erling Strand, my friend, and Professor Björn Gitle Haugi, and other people who have been living very closely to the phenomenon, like Leif Havik, since 1984, when there in Hesdalen, something little village in central Norway, at that time it was 200 inhabitants, all of a sudden there was a flap. This is a conventional term used by ufologists, but I think it works. A lot of phenomena were occurring, and they launched pragmatically a very aimed campaign of measurements using multi-wavelength instruments like electromagnetic measurements, telescopic measurements, optical, and even triangular spectroscopy. Erling Strand has been a pioneer in this. This was done also in the United States a few years before by Professor Harley Rutledge in Piedmont.
Because who was that? Who did you say in the United States was doing this?
Professor Harley Rutledge was a professor in Piedmont, Missouri. I think it's Missouri.
Okay.
Between 1973 and 1980, more or less, where he launched the campaign of observation of a similar phenomenon that was occurring very often, and he used his PhD students, namely young scientists, very bright, very fast, to try to take measurements of the phenomenon. So Hesdalen is not the only one, but Hesdalen is the best in the world, thanks to the Project Hesdalen group, because it maintains several measurement stations since at least 30 years. And not only that, but it has a wonderful initiative because they establish a science camp, which is a way to teach students how to get data by stimulating them with a very interesting phenomenon. So you trigger people with this phenomenon, but you also tell to the young students, you have to use your brain, you have to use rationality, you have to use science in order to try to understand what the phenomenon is.
Right.
So what Erling and Bjorn and their collaborators, because there are others, and is great, and I support it, even if it's a long time I don't go there. I did my own missions there, but not only there, but I was also in Canada, Ontario. I was in Arizona. I was in some places somewhere here in northern Italy, in Ireland. And this phenomenon is spread all over the world, but Hesdalen is, I think, the most important because it's the one in which science has been applied more constantly, and that's fantastic. They are going on with doing that. They got funding, and they fully deserved it. Now there is this initiative by Professor Avi Loeb,
right,
which is in some way wider initiative because it's aimed at investigating the possibility that a solar system has been visited by other spacecraft or how you call arcs or carriers, so call it as you want, and something that is more close in our atmosphere. Professor Loeb is very objective because he says we have to see with the eyes of our instruments what is that, because otherwise we would be like a strike, putting the head under the ground, and this is not scientific. I appreciate his initiative and I support it, and I am very happy I was invited to be an affiliate to his research, and I hope to be helpful in this. I have much to say. There is a long experience, not only of missions that I did, but also about strategic programs, strategies in order to try optimize the data that we want to take.
So what do you make of Avi's approach to getting 1 meter telescopes, starting in mountainous areas? What do you make of his current approach, and what would be your recommendations with the experience that you have?
Yeah, I completely agree with him clearly, because putting a 1 meter telescope on top of mountains is good because you can avoid atmospheric turbulence. Atmospheric turbulence is creating so-called seeing disk, and it enlarges the image of a point-like source, and it creates problem in the resolution of the image. If you observe from high where the air is less dense, you could obtain better images, unless the phenomenon is below, because in many cases the phenomenon is below the top.
Right.
So in this case, we have a very experimenting technology, which is called adaptive optics, which is able to correct the mirror to pilot the mirror using actuators in order to correct all the factors that are creating the effect of atmospheric seeing. So that, for instance, if we have a seeing that is 4 or 5 arc seconds, which is very bad, with adaptive optics, hopefully it should be used with those telescopes Avi is going to use, we would be able to go up to 1 arc second. This means that we have a point-like source. For instance, if we take the telescope and we point it to a double star, there are many double stars in the universe, we wouldn't see 2 stars. We would see only 1, because it's all blurred.
Right.
But if the resolution is better, we can be able to resolve. So we have a so-called spatial resolution, and so we can see details very well. So the project, the idea is very good. The only problem is that the telescope is aimed at studying objects that are far away. This is a good strategy because objects that are far away and are moving even fast have a very low angular velocity, so angular speed. So it's easier to track them to the target. But the signal to noise ratio, namely the number of photons that reach us, are not very many. We can compensate this part not only with the aperture of the telescope, the diameter, which is number of photons is proportional to the square of the diameter. But we can use detectors, cameras, which are CCD detectors, that even amplify the capability to detect spatially okay, and also on in wavelength range what we want to see. So it's good to start with this first. Then we need to add many other things, clearly.
Right. Can you thank you for that. So let's go back a little bit because I want to understand your experience in Norway. Can you give us a breakdown of what it is that you guys were able to capture and what you've seen personally in your experience there?
Yeah. Well, I have been there 4 times, and I am planning to go again after a long time, by the way, thanks to my friend Dahlin, Professor Strand, and COVID permitting, clearly.
Right.
Yes, let's hope. The phenomenon that we saw most of the times looks like a natural phenomenon. It doesn't look like anything alien. Okay, it's very strange, but there is a big mystery in that, and this is of a big interest for fundamental physics because, okay, we know that there are geophysical causes that can trigger this kind of phenomenon. For instance, piezoelectricity from rocks for several causes that can trigger voltage in the atmosphere and liberate this energy. But what we don't know is why this energy is concentrated in a spherical form. So why there is a plasma confinement. What is the mechanism that is confining the plasma? We think it's a strong magnetic field. We think there is a central force, apparently similar to gravity or something else. This is something important for fundamental physics because if we understand the mechanism of how this happens, we could reproduce in a laboratory. So the study of this phenomenon could be a consequence of, let's accept it, visitations. Okay, but even if it is not that, our understanding of the phenomenon using not only CCD detectors but also spectrum analyzers in the optical, in the infrared, in the radio, we could try to understand the physical mechanism of what is happening and of something in nature that is able to confine plasma. There is something we don't know yet. So this research, as Professor Avi Loeb has launched, is of double importance. We could detect something that is coming from visitors, or otherwise we could understand better some mechanism of physics in our atmosphere, which could increase our knowledge of fundamental physics. So this is incredibly important. Avi has my full support, and I will try to do my best for my little with my experience, which is anyway important. So that's what I think. So it's there are strange lights there, very often close to the ground, so they can be confused with a car headlights or something. But sometimes we know all the roads where the cars are, so we know that not only there, and sometimes they are in the sky. But strangely, I was a witness, but I couldn't record it because it was a transient event. There were 3 transient events in which something clearly structured appeared in front of me and some colleagues that was not looking natural phenomenon at all. So it seems there are 2 kinds of phenomena there, maybe 3 kinds of phenomena. Sometimes there are flashes in the sky. It's something like the seeds of something that try to turn on and then dies. And then there is something else. It seems it's monitoring the valley for some reason. And we have to understand the last word is not given to speculation. It's nice to do speculation. I also did very courageous speculations, but in this case, what is important is to collect very clear data, namely high signal to noise ratio, so many photons on the detector, and a good time resolution in the sense that it's not sufficient that we see we have a megapixel image of the phenomenon. That's good, but we have to see how this image is varying with time, because the dynamics of the phenomenon can give us hints on the physical mechanism. Let it be natural or not natural. For instance, I have to tell you, in astrophysics, we have learned the reason why in the nucleus of galaxies, or in particular galaxies, also our one, but much less quasars, the strong variability in the nucleus is due to a mega black hole of 10 to power 10 million or 1 billion solar masses. We understood that from the variability. We understood, for instance, stars like Cepheids, the reason why they pulsate, studying the variability of their radiation. So variability of the phenomenon can give us the physical mechanism, and if we observe the phenomenon simultaneously in different wavelengths, like optical, infrared, radio, and I have experience in ultraviolet, in all of these, we can understand something of the physical mechanism. I think the universe is self-similar. So if we understood the physics of a mega phenomenon in cosmos, we can understand the physics of strange phenomena in our atmosphere. They can be natural, they can not be. I don't care. I am agnostic, as well as rightly Avi and his collaborators said. And but we have to be cold and take the data and do not care any kind of attacks, because they're less than mosquitoes for us. Okay, so we go ahead, okay, with no expectation, no faith, no belief, only what the data are showing to us. So this is the position.
So this is fascinating, because you're talking about quite a few different kinds of phenomena, and you said that you had a very specific experience with phenomena that seems to be natural. So can you kind of give us the lay of the land, what this valley is like when you visited? So you said that sometimes you'll see the lights low, almost like headlights from a car. Sometimes you'll see them in the sky, and then you kind of described another experience that didn't seem very natural to you. Can you kind of tell us about the lay of the land and what it feels like to be there, and what the locals have been seeing for so much time?
It's a beautiful place, and we had the luck to meet not only Erling Strand and Björn Gitle Auge, but also some inhabitants who were very humble, who never wanted to put their name in the media or something. They were very kind and told us what they experienced, and they told things that were sometimes very shocking.
Scary? You say shocking? Are they afraid, or?
They were afraid, yes. Yeah. Some of them. Others simply said stories. If you go to Project Dahlin website that Erling is constantly updating, you don't see only the data that their instruments are taking, but also witnesses. Witnesses can be useful sometimes, and it says it's a phenomenon that's similar apparently to ball lightning, but it's much bigger in size and much more long-lasting. Wow. In some cases, there was something that was big, like the roof of a house. And I have to be honest, the first time I arrived there, it was snowing, it was spring in 1994, and there was a big congress about ball lightning where I was presenting something of mine, my calculations, and there was a huge lightning. Um, there was no storm, but there was a huge light outside at 3 a.m. in the night. I went out, I saw nothing. There was something like a column of light that lasted a few seconds. So there are several kind of phenomena. There are some kind of strange lights that are appearing on the top of the hills, sometimes on the sky. We were able sometimes to get it. And sometimes these lights are able to acquire geometrical shape.
When you say geometrical shape, what do you mean?
I mean a rectangle, for instance.
Okay.
I remember because that time in 2001, we had a professional video camera, a Canon, I don't remember the type now, but it came out that there was a sort of group of three lights, one of which was changing all the time shape and became a rectangle, a perfect rectangle.
And you said perfect rectangle is in multiple points of light creating a rectangle, or one giant ball of.
No, in analyzing the images, I didn't see points of light. It was just a rectangle. I thought this is pixelation, clearly. But you have pixelation when you have a matrix of 4 by 4 pixel, not a matrix by 50 by 25 pixel. Okay.
Right.
At same time, I was taking the same exposure with a conventional camera. Those times we didn't have this good DSLR, and it was showing the same thing, but it was more blurred because it was during an exposure. Instead, the camera, the telecamera, was a snapshot. Okay. So it was possible from the telecamera to see that there were a ball of lights all around this rectangle, and but this is not sufficient to me to say this is a portal, this is something from other dimension. It's not sufficient. If you look at nature, how it works, for instance, snowflakes. Look at snowflakes. Snowflakes are perfectly geometric, and yet it's a natural phenomenon.
Right.
So it's something that we don't know yet about the behavior of plasmas in particular conditions. And some striking work has been published in 2007 by German and Russian scientists showing that in some situations plasmas can behave like DNA, like a life form, literally, because they did computer simulations. Also in the space station, Mir space station of Russia that they had before. So we have to study better what happens in plasmas. Okay.
Can you give us some background so we can fully understand what plasma actually is in this sort of in this sort of context?
Yeah, when you have a very high temperature, I mean something. I mean in the optical. If we see a light ball, okay, in the optical, you assume that the air, oxygen and nitrogen are ionized in the sense that atoms are split in their components, which are nucleons in protons, positively charged, and electrons that are negatively charged.
Okay.
In this case, high temperature strip away the electrons from the nucleus, and at some point you have electrons, and you have a soup of electrons and ions, namely positively charged protons, all together in a soup. The sun, for instance, is itself a plasma. A plasma can have several temperatures. In the nucleus of the sun, we have 1 million Kelvin degrees. Outside, we have about 6,000 Kelvin degrees. And what we see in these plasma lights, it's something that is ranging from 4,000 up to, I would say, 6,000 degrees. I can confirm this because thanks to the work of a very good practitioner, who is Jerry Ercolini, who took a very excellent spectrum in our area here, which clearly shows the spectral lines, their bands in reality, in the red part of the spectrum of oxygen. So it shows that it's a phenomenon that is ionizing, exciting the atmosphere. We don't know what it is, but there it is. It's lasting a long time. This is a mystery because something that comes from the ground, can it be natural battery? Can it be piezoelectricity? Should extinguish in a very short time.
Right.
Instead, it stays self-contained for a long time.
When you say a long time, Wheelo Hilo says the longest humans have been able to sustain a self-organizing plasma sphere for fusion is something like a minute. These objects have been observed in the atmosphere for 2+ hours. Can you confirm that? Is that 2+ hours these objects have been known to be sustained?
I confirm, but this happened when the light was not always constantly on, because this phenomenon tends to turn on and off. Okay. So not only that, but I remember once in 2001, I was with my colleagues of the Medicina Radio Telescope, who gave an important contribution here in Italy. I've been working there as an astronomer. I remember there was a light that was just over the Jungel Lake, which is some 5 kilometers away from Hessdalen, and all of a sudden it disappeared. We had a night vision system, and looking with it, the light was still there. So it was at low energy level. And so this teaches us that in this kind of phenomenon, we have to extend our range of observations to the infrared and, in case, to the ultraviolet. So multi-wavelength. This is what has to be done in a later phase. First, we have to solve the problem of putting and testing 1 meter telescope to see how it works, how it's able to, say, pan the target. Then we will add all the things. It's like to put the balls to a Christmas tree. First, we have to put the tree and be sure that the tree is standing. Then we put all the balls.
Wow. For those of you just joining us, I'm just going to reset the room quickly because we've got an absolutely fascinating conversation happening with Dr. Massimo Teodorani. He's an astrophysicist and best-selling author. For those of you who've been asking, he's also a musician. You can see some of his synthesizers behind him. We'll get into that a little bit later because I'm quite curious, Doctor. But he's been studying Norway's Hesdalen Valley for decades and the extraordinary UAP phenomenon. What I'd love to ask you, Massimo, is the categories. How have you guys been able to categorize the different phenomenon that you've seen and studied and have been researching?
Well, first of all, I have to tell you this. Avi and the group want rightly to start a systematic, rigorous investigation
Right.
Of the phenomenon. But we, as I told them yesterday in our meeting, we have to select carefully the areas because we risk to waste our energy for nothing.
Right. So, time, money, energy, resources.
Yeah, we have to choose. We have to choose the place very well. And so in this case, witnesses, the statistics of witnesses, it's very often not very well screened. But when you have I would say 5,000 witnesses, then the statistical law tells you something. And I did an experiment in 2009 studying the new fork data, witness data. So it's not measurement. And found that the number of cases of witness grows with the number of inhabitants. Okay, so this is a selection effect. Okay, but when you find a lot of phenomena, when the number of inhabitants is low, that's the nucleus where you can put the instrumentation. Then you know, it's like to make a reconnaissance mission before bombing. Okay, it's a bad similarity. I am a pacifist, by the way, but it's like reconnaissance first and bombing with our brain. Okay, so we have to put that. Then yes, how do we select? Well, there are lights that are look plasma, and there are things that look. I would say 1/10 of the cases in Hessdalen, but also in other places, like several in the United States, are clearly structured. We don't know what is the relation between the two kinds of phenomena. We don't know. I have speculations, but it's not time to speak about this now. We have to be careful to hoaxes. We have to be careful to a lot of problems that, to the noise that is infecting the signal. Birds, how to say, dust in the lens, or when there is a light that is, how to say, hitting the camera, where there is drops of water. It gives very strange shapes, but that's
right.
There are many natural causes, many prosaic causes that have to be taken out. Okay,
right.
So we have to build up a database of prosaic things in a computer database, as well as database of electromagnetic manifestations like VLF, ELF, or microwave, something that are natural or something that are man-made, like the washing machine, for instance. A washing machine makes a very funny manifestation on the VLF receiver, and so there is a lot of work to do here, and we have to be careful because we are working in a field full of bad weed, okay, and we are searching for the good flowers, or we are working between very bad stones in order to search golden objects. So we have to be extremely rigorous, extremely careful, but at the same time, we have to be careful not to throw away the baby with
the bathwater, right?
So this is healthy skepticism.
Yeah, that sounds very difficult. You mentioned some of these different buckets that you've been putting these things in the research. You mentioned some things that seem to be structural. Can you kind of describe what you saw that appeared to be structural, and then maybe some of the other sightings that appeared to be structural?
Yeah, well, it lasted a few minutes. It was in the year 2000. I prefer not to make the names but there were 5 witnesses. At that moment, we didn't have the instruments operating. It was a triangle. It was something that was 3 lights on the vertices, only in the vertices. I had my binoculars, and I could see, because there was a residual light. It was late, before midnight. There was a residual Nordic light, and I could see dark gray fuselage. Okay, this is not sufficient to say these are aliens coming over us.
Right.
This could be any kind of drones that are tested in these areas, which is ideal for the military because they would say, oh, they think they're aliens, so we can do what the heck we want.
Trick the scientists.
Yeah, yes. It's a scientific terminology that sometimes comes out. And so they were, they might want to use those areas, not only in Hesdalen, but also in other areas, to let all people think, including scientists, because they are mocking us too, that what we are seeing is alien. In some cases, it's not alien. And that's the reason why in most cases, I would say, I've been studying a lot aerospace and fond of aeronautics. And I can assure you that there are drones since already not only tested that are flying saucer like wing shaped, not like the B2, but something like a triangle, literally. Okay, so it's very maneuverable. So there is something in the aerospace of the military that can simulate that. So we need someone in our group that is able to distinguish this noise and take it away. So it's a difficult task. It's very difficult because even if we have a very megapixel resolution image with a telescope, this doesn't mean that what we have seen is alien.
Right.
Okay? So we have to compare, thanks to artificial intelligence, to a model of what we know, because the military are sometimes spying, but we also spy them. It's our duty. So, but at the same time, we support them because they don't understand yet that if only they had given to us their data for analysis, they would have been the first to be contacted. If there is something that is a threat, they would have been contacted immediately, not only, but we would have accepted to be silent to the public. Simply, they don't trust that they are proprietary when these things are not belonging to them, that they are belonging to humanity and to science. But they don't want to give it. And not only that, but they even delete the data, radar data.
Right.
Okay. So I know that. I know that very well.
What do you think? One of the things that some folks have been suggesting for Project Galileo and projects like yours, and I love the fact, I'm thrilled that you're speaking with Avi Loeb, and I'm thrilled that you are an affiliate with the Galileo Project. What do you make of this idea that we need to start to triangulate in order to understand and observe the movements of some of these phenomena? Because looking at something from a single point of view and a linear perspective doesn't necessarily, even if you had, as you mentioned, even if you have a megapixel image, it doesn't allow you to know what sort of capabilities either, this natural phenomenon or potentially intelligent phenomena that we don't understand yet, we don't necessarily have the ability to, understand the full capabilities of it. How would we go about triangulating and understanding and observing the movements and characteristics of UAP?
Yeah, triangulation is very classical way. So you can take 2 or 3 stations that are measuring the same target, and with simple trigonometry, you can find the distance. In my opinion, it would be more practical to use radar to get the distance, a radar or a laser telemeter, because also plasmas, in case, are sensitive to radar. Okay, otherwise we wouldn't have meteorological radars. So we would need a radar, and there are industries that build these instruments that serve the military, but these industries are not military. So we could, I think, try to see if they can sell us this kind of radar, which are used, for instance, for the counter-air system in the ships or on the ground. This is for science. Clearly, we don't want to use maritime radar because we want something more sophisticated,
Right.
which gives us the distance. In that case, only when we have the distance in hand and when we measure the light of the phenomenon, in whatever wavelength, then we can calculate the intrinsic energy density of the phenomenon. So at a zero distance, like if it was a phenomenon at zero distance. So we can make a good physics. We can make good physics only with variability, but in this case, I think triangulation is okay, but I think I would spend more money for a radar, for a single instrument, than to use two twin instruments to make triangulation. But this is my own opinion. I might be wrong.
Right. Somebody mentioned, I believe Aaron Rosario mentioned LiDAR. Are you familiar with LiDAR? And do you think this might be an interesting system with capabilities that could help us triangulate, or at least understand and gather more data?
I think I've never used a LiDAR, and I would say LiDAR is also good because it can give also some information about the chemical composition of the substance that is writing, for instance. It's used to study the atmosphere for composition of aerosols or something. So it would be useful, yes, clearly, because it's straight and it gives precise distance to the target. And yes, why not?
Got it. And how long, going back to the valley, how long have these sightings been known of in the valley? Is this something that's been going on for decades and decades, or was this recently discovered? What's the history behind this?
I read somewhere that the phenomenon in reality was seen much before the 80s, but officially, with all my ignorance, of course, Erling, which I would suggest you to invite Professor Erlingstrand to speak here because
Okay.
he knows that.
What's his name again? What was his name again?
Professor Erling Petter Strand. If you go to Project Hesdalen, you will see his name.
Got it.
He is the pioneer and creator of this initiative. So he will speak to you about his big experience and scientific and technical preparation. So that's good. It's, to best of my knowledge, the phenomenon started in the beginning of the 80s with sudden huge flaps. Then it decayed in time, but it maintained its appearance. It's still being seen, but not so much, in my opinion, like it was seen in the 1984 February, January and February. So there was a big campaign of observation there, and it was the real first scientific initiative to measure the so-called UFO phenomenon, which is a general term.
Right. Axel wants to know, and you mentioned this a little bit earlier, but has there been any interest from either the Norwegian government or any other governments or intelligence interest in Hesdalen?
Well, not at my knowledge. I can only say that I have had very strange telephone calls in the past. But not yet, not memes. I didn't have memes because I would have laughed really very much. But I had very strange telephone calls, yes.
Interesting. Interesting. And where is what's the current status of the study? And is it currently funded? Is this something that the study's wrapped up, or is this something that's currently being investigated?
It's currently being investigated through, I didn't go there since a very long time, but I followed the case from in distance. What I see is that Professor Strand rightly got funding to buy off-the-shelf instrumentation to measure the phenomena and to build up a new additional station at Mount Scarvan in Hesdalen. If you look in on Facebook, for instance, Project Hesdalen, they will show photos of the students that are installing equipment, a lot of computers that are getting the data with the several kinds of instruments, DLF recorders, high quality DLSR camera with spectral gratings, electrostatic detectors, microwave receiver. I think there is also a radar. So they have a lot of little modern instruments and many very motivated students of engineering and of high school that say train themselves in this very instructive experience, which Professor Strand and Professor Björn Hauge invented successfully. And sometimes they found something, yes.
Let me ask you this. What do you think? One of the things that I noticed with Project Galileo and Avi Loeb's team is the researchers primarily consist of astronomers. Are there any other disciplines that you would recommend for Avi and for the rest of for the research groups in order to more fully identify these objects? Like, is there any specific skill sets you would recommend?
Well, I think that Professor Loeb has collected a good mix of competencies who are astronomers, clearly because we have to analyze the light of this phenomenon. So if we are physicists of this specific kind and engineers. I would say electronic engineers, which are present there, computer engineers, mathematicians, programmers, and AI experts. So for now, this. If, like Avi said, we find something in the future that is very difficult to explain, then we could involve theoretical physicists who could try to see if their models can fit with the observations are doing. But it's not yet time to make pindaric flights because now we have to concentrate on getting very good data, very reliable data. And so for now, the idea is to see what our known physics is able to acquire of these things. Then, in case, but this is my own opinion, we can shift to something else, step by step.
Right. And I find it fascinating too. This obviously, again, you've put some of these UAP in the Hesdalen Valley into several different buckets. The majority being this sort of interesting plasma. Obviously, the future of humanity is going to be reliant on extraordinary amounts of energy, and fusion power is potentially something that could be enormous in helping us to mitigate climate change. Can you give us an idea of what your thoughts are in regards to what we're observing with this plasma phenomenon and how that might help us understand fusion and improve fusion technology?
Yeah, well, it's something very interesting because we are trying since at least 30 years to produce nuclear fusion, and we have to be able to confine a plasma at a temperature of 20 million degrees. So it's the same temperature of the sun, of the stars, and we need to find a way to confine the plasma. It seems the Chinese, these tokamaks, are able to do well. They are able to maintain the plasma confined for several minutes without extinguishing. In nature, it seems there are mechanisms that are able to confine the plasma. So nature is able to do that. If we are able to understand how nature is doing that, then we could be able to reproduce this thing in a lab. It could be nature, or it could be another kind of technology. So this is extremely important for energy because we need clean energy. We need to get rid of oil, of coal, of all these things. So this research is motivated not only by the curiosity to find in case aliens or strange phenomena, but it's also pragmatic because it can help us to reproduce in a lab when we have all the correct measurements that we can take from telescopes like Avi Loeb is proposing. We can, when we know the parameters, we can reproduce in the lab and we can make possible new source of energy, learning directly from what nature or what something else is showing to us. So this research is of double importance. It's more important, okay, than to refine, how to say, the research about magnetic stars or about things that we already know. Okay, it's science is for rigor, but most of all is for exploration, and this demands a lot of pragmatism and but also a lot of fighting because conservatism is something difficult to avoid. But they didn't understand yet, conservatives in science, as well as people of lay persons, that what is being doing here is not new physics, at least not now. It's simply standard physics. We are still inside the scientific church, like let we call it so. The only difference is the object of investigation. Something is happening there. We have the duty, also ethical duty to investigate because people want to know, we want to know, and science is not a Pickwick circle for a few. Science is something at the service of all humanity. So we have to do that rigorously and inside the temple of science. I'm sorry, if someone thinks that this is out of the temple of science, that person is completely wrong. It's just inside, okay? In case we could, we can change the furniture of the temple, we can take away some paintings and put something else, but the temple is always the same. Galilean and Project Galileo is very well, is a title that has been chosen very well because Galileo was an explorer, he had the balls, and he was the creator of rigorous science. So that's what we want to do. I think Avi would agree with me. And yeah, that's all.
That's absolutely amazing. And I find it so fascinating, this idea that, the idea that scientists are not flocking there to understand this phenomena where they're seeing potential plasma manifesting itself for hours at a time, and what the, what that could do for humanity. And the other part of my brain is like this fascinated, what if there were alien intelligence or technologies that were literally creating this just to, push our scientists to discover how we can save ourselves here on Earth. And
what you say is very interesting. It's very interesting. Maybe someone might stimulate us, like the monolith in 2001 movie, using something else to stimulate our mind. And it's time to awake. We have a climate crisis that is really much big. I heard a meteorologist the other day who was telling me he thought that this climate change is would have been so drastic only after 100 years, not after a few years. So we are in a very critical situation. And studying new form of energy is fundamental for us. And if we find something, other intelligence in the universe, well, we can only learn that. And it's nothing particularly esoteric. It's something natural. So we don't have to be too much surprised by this.
Right. Massimo, what an absolute pleasure having you with us today. I hope you'll join us again soon. Are you in a hurry to run off, or would you like to stick around for a few more minutes?
Well, I have to do something somewhere because there is a guy who is going to telephone. I wouldn't like, but I have to. What are you going to do now?
Oh, well, we're just going to bring on a couple people. We're bringing in a panel to discuss what we discuss here, and then we've got a few other topics we're going to talk about. But if you've got to go, that's totally fine. But I would love for people.
I can come back. I can come back in 10 minutes, probably.
Okay, you're welcome to. We'd love to have you back. Can you tell people where they can find your work, where they can find your book, and also where they can find your music? Because you are a producer of digital music as well, and I'd love for people to find that.
Yeah. They can find massimoteodorani.com, and this is my website, which shows some of my articles. You can find links to my technical articles, which are on ResearchGate, and they can find my books, and they can find my electronic music at Totem Tag. This is my pseudonym. On Bandcamp. If they like, it's a Tangerine Dream-like song, more or less. Berlin School, German School.
Fantastic, Massimo. It's just an absolute pleasure. And if you can make it back, feel free, hop in. If not, that's okay.
I will try. It depends on the telephone call. There is some guy there.
No worries at all.
To solve the problem of the practical thing.
Yeah, no worries. And I'd love to have you back on a future show as well. You've been just lovely. So we appreciate your time.
I leave it on. Okay.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
All right.
Very happy to be with you.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Doctor. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye. Wow. I was just extraordinary. I was blown away by him. I had no idea. I've never heard of the Hesdalen Valley before. This is all brand new to me. And
wow, me neither. Holy cow. Whoa.
Look who's here, guys.
Whoa, what a great interview. Yeah, one of my favorites.
Hi, Lou. How are you doing, buddy?
Hey, man. Time zones, am I right? Am I right?
Am I right? Absolutely.
You know what's hilarious is I left my phone in my office. It's not hilarious, but about 10 minutes before 12, and I told my girlfriend, I'm like, you okay? Everything's cool? She's like, yeah, everything's cool. I'm like, all right, cool. I'm going to take a nap with you. So I took a nap. And then I woke up and I saw your text. I'm like, what's going on? What's happening? Oh, there's a show going on.
Well, Lou, it's great to have you. I'm glad you got some lovely time with Michelle, because she needs you, and we're not selfish over here, so we're glad you got to spend some time with her.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, bro. Yeah, bro.
Get a beer.
It's all
Get a
good.
beer.
This is what happens, folks. This is live. This is live stuff, and this stuff happens. But what an amazing interview! What Massimo is just extraordinary. But we've got a great second hour for you guys. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, what are you doing? Subscribe, hit the bell, so you know whenever we go live. This way, let's say, for instance, maybe, I don't know, you're having a nap with your girlfriend and you don't want to miss a show. And sometimes, shows go on at different times and you want a notification. Maybe click the bell.
But here's the thing. Don't leave your phone in another room. And if you are going to do that, make sure your girlfriend also rings the bell. On the channel. So.
Also an excellent point. How about we bring some folks in? We got a cool second hour coming for you guys. I'm going to bring in our main guest for the second hour last, but I want to go ahead and introduce Aaron DeSario, who is joining us right now. Aaron,
what time is it? Oh, hi. Hey.
I deserve that. That's fair. That's fair. Aaron, I like your shirt, though.
Yes, cool. It's a great shirt.
And Stephen with me.
I love it. Aaron, thank you so much for joining us. For those of you who don't know Aaron DeSario, he is a dear friend of the show. He's a science and technology enthusiast, currently works as a staff software engineer at Google. He co-invented and received a patent for iPhoto, if you guys didn't know, and he's a pioneer in digital photo organization. What's up, Aaron? How are you?
Hi there. Great to be here. I'm ready to plant my tongue firmly into my cheek to discuss our topic today.
Did you get kicked out to the garage? I see
so
your Christmas decorations.
We're moving this weekend out of this house we've been here for 15 years. And so the inside is torn up into boxes. And I've been relegated to the garage for now.
That's lots of moving after 15 years.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Stuff in places you never knew you had.
Yes.
Yeah, I imagine. I wonder where you stuffed that Chris Hemsworth poster.
He has been carefully folded, and he will be lovingly carried along with our huge Audrey 2 plant. My wife is a drama teacher, and we were about to do a production of Little Shop last year. And then COVID hit, and they were unable to put on the production of Little Shop of Horrors. Aww. And we ended up with an Audrey 2 that's, large enough to eat a person, because that's what happens at the end of the show.
Right.
Very nice. Well, Aaron, it's great to have you. We've got an awesome second hour, and we really appreciate you joining us. Our next guest is new to the show. His name is Campbell Moriera. He is hopefully I said that right. He'll correct me shortly. He's a UAP enthusiast, small business owner from Ontario, Canada. He is also looking to bring greater awareness to university research associated with recurrent UAP phenomenon in the Hesdalen Valley. He's also the one that connected me with Massimo. Welcome. It's great to have you, Campbell.
Hey, thank you. It's really great to be here. You guys watch you constantly, and I think your activism is just phenomenal and such a big part of how we move this forward. So, it's really awesome to be here.
Well, we really appreciate that. And hopefully Massimo comes back and we can connect you with him, because I bet you'd be excited to talk to him face to face, huh?
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Well, the purpose for this second hour, ladies and gentlemen, is to bring in a very special guest. Why didn't you wait? I was going to introduce him.
I just wanted to get him as much screen time as possible, but let's do this. That's fine. We'll just go back there, Chris.
We've got, for those of you who are not familiar with the Jazz Shaw, he recently wrote a piece for Debrief Media that actually launched today. It's a 4,000-word article about the dolphin empire and the relationship. It's a incredible thought experiment about dolphins and the UAP phenomena. Welcome to the one, the only Jazz Shaw.
Thank you very much. Really been looking forward to this. By the way, before we get into the whole topic, Aaron, if you're putting up the Audrey 2 for bids, I would like to bid on that. I would really like to get a hold of that. So But
I don't think it's for sale, but maybe we could rent it to you.
that's possible. Maybe we could just like have it for like the summer seasons up at camp or something.
Yeah,
A bunch of students construct it.
I'm not entirely sure how it was constructed. We have both students and parent involvement at this at some point, and there was many hands involved.
Fantastic.
I'd love to see it. You know, somebody at some point put some pictures up, because I'm just a huge fan of the various editions of that story and the movies that were made. So, and by the way, congratulations, Mike. The interview with Massimo was incredible. I was taking notes through most of it, and I've already started going through the Black Vault and like trying to search some of the things he was talking about.
Yeah.
And I think he was talking about a lot of things that we're admittedly, I'm not going to speak for anybody else. Admittedly, I'm more of an America-centric, United States, English-speaking, investigating the topic. And there's so much out there we don't know about because it hasn't been translated, and a lot of us are not, bilingual.
Right.
And, and I think there was a lot of good stuff there. So great job with that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And that was something that we've got an image. Hold on. Here we go.
It's good looking.
I like it.
It looks like it's face palming, so that's why
I
we
like
took the
it.
picture.
That's amazing. Jazz, I couldn't agree with you more, man. I mean, the fact that we are, as Americans, we tend to be very insulated, and as Americans, most of us, even though we maybe took 2 or 3 years of a foreign language, we just don't do it with the advocacy that the Europeans do. Yeah.
Lost in translation. I mean, he speaks Italian and very good English, but obviously he was communicating with people in Norway.
Right. Norwegian, Italian. Yeah, it's a lot.
I took 3 years of Spanish. Right now, I can tell you how to ask where the shoe store is. Donde la zapateria. I think I even screwed that up. That's about all I remember. So
yeah. I'm right there with you, man. I'm right there with you. So, Jazz, I'm super excited to dig into your article. For so long, you've been bringing this subject up, and we've all kind of taken it as kind of a joke. But you've always said it's not a joke. It's more of a thought experiment, more of a way of looking at this phenomenon and realizing what you don't know. And maybe we shouldn't all be so biased or convicted in the way we look at this subject. Can you tell us if I'm on the right track here or if I'm completely off?
No, I think you are on the right track. Before we get started, I would like credit, because as opposed to most of the shows we do, I actually showed up wearing a shirt that has a collar and 3 buttons. I don't have a tie. Okay, but that's way above and beyond what I normally dress for these shows. So I do that out of respect for the Dolphin Empire.
I love that a polo shirt is dressing up for Jazz Shaw. I mean,
it absolutely is.
It looks good. It looks good. I know. I wanted to go golfing with you.
That's huge for me. I'm on vacation right now. I'm sorry. I talked over Kristen. I'm going to shut up.
Oh, you're fine.
Oh yeah, you're good.
No, Kristen, go ahead.
Well, she said that you looked like you were playing golf.
Go on the golf course. They would allow him on the golf.
Oh, and now Luis is talking over her, telling you what she said.
Yep.
We're all supposed to be doing better about not mansplaining to women.
Yeah.
When Kristen wants to talk, I will shut up. Okay? Let's have some
So,
respect.
Kristen, what Jazz is doing is talking about the thing we won't be doing.
And not only that, but he had to tell Kristen what Jazz was saying.
I had to mansplain the fact that I didn't want to mansplain her. Yeah, that's where we are, apparently.
Yep. Welcome to 2021, everybody.
Hello. We are all guilty of it. We are all guilty of it. So,
NMUAP says with a $5 donation, I want to be Jazz Shaw when I grow up. Also, it looks like we've got Massimo back in the background. Let's go ahead and bring him in on the panel. So just to catch you up, Massimo, we're talking about a thought experiment, an article that Jazz Shaw wrote about the UAP phenomenon looking through the eyes of dolphins. So why don't we turn it over to Jazz and let him share what his article was about.
Okay, well, like I said, I'm just starting a vacation period right now, and there's been a lot of different things around my house in the last couple of months. Some of you already.
Oops, shit. Sorry, Jazz. I was trying to take Kristen out. Go ahead.
Because of course we take Kristen out after that conversation. You know. We had a lot of conversations about, the importance of keeping your eyes on the skies, but also keeping an open mind. In June, I had this Tic Tac sighting that some of the people on this panel already know about, and it really made me kind of reevaluate, how much time we spend looking at the skies and things like that, but also the assumptions that we bring to the table with us. And back during the first big phone home, I brought forth the idea that if there are UFOs, and the government now agrees there are unidentified aerial phenomena, well, who's driving them if somebody is? And I made the point that could be extraterrestrials, could be the Chinese or the Russians. I don't think it's either of them. And I said, well, maybe it could be the dolphins. And I went into this long period of exploring, it's like, why couldn't it be? Why are dolphins a worse, explanation than a hypothetical extraterrestrial intelligence?
Right.
And the more I compared them, I looked and I wrote a very long article, and thank you for referencing it, Michael. It's gotten a huge amount of feedback today already from the debrief from readers. And it's just like, how are my arguments any worse than the people saying that, oh, well, it's definitely little grays from Zeta Reticuli or, whatever, I think I can make a pretty solid argument for dolphins that, barring any real physical evidence and somebody wheeling out a body of an alien gray or a reptilian, that actually you might say there's a better argument to say that the UFOs that we're seeing, the UAP that we're trying to figure out, if you say it's dolphins, your argument's really no worse than anybody saying it's interstellar visitors.
Right. No, that's an excellent point. And so is that kind of the thesis of the argument, is that there is so little good data and so little understanding of the origin of multiple phenomena that are you pushing people to kind of back off their rigid ideologies? Is that kind of where you're headed?
I wouldn't phrase it that way, Michael. I would phrase it more, I'm encouraging people to have more of an open mind, because there are, and I've been guilty of this at times over the years, there are people that really married to the idea. If you ask Mick West, it's all weather phenomena or seagulls. There are other people you can talk to who say, look, this is our government's secret stuff they won't tell us about, or it's the Russians or the Chinese. And there's another whole community that will tell you, no, that's impossible because we're not at that technological level. So it's definitely aliens. And my argument is there's problems with all of those until we have substantive, defensible evidence. Somebody wheels out an alien body of a gray or a reptilian. Okay, fine, you win. That's what it was. Somebody wheels out a wrecked flying saucer, if you think that we actually have those, and who knows, we might, the government lies about everything. Give us some physical evidence. But until you do, my whole point is, not only is the dolphin argument just as valid as the rest of them, in some areas, it's possibly even more valid. and I have specifics if you want to discuss those.
I do. But before you discuss the specifics, can you answer this question for us? Kooky puts in a $5 donation. Jazz, do you think we will be able to talk to dolphins with tech like in the TV show Sequest DSV?
Thank you, first of all, Cookie, for the donation. And as a frequent donor to Michael's show and to Louis' show, I appreciate that. And I would encourage everybody else to support this channel, because there's a big thing coming up that Louis and Michael will talk about later, I'm sure. That's really important, and they need the support. No, I don't. Can you put that question up again?
Yeah, sure.
I just got off promoting the channel.
Basically, are we going to figure out? Are we going to get the technology that allows us to communicate directly with big brain mammals in the ocean?
Maybe eventually. I have an article that was published back in, I believe it was March, on the debrief, where I did a huge investigation into trying to communicate with dolphins, because dolphins are incredibly smart. They have a really complex language. We have been studying this for more than a century. Really smart people doing tests all the time. And the dolphins seem to know what we're talking about, because they show signs when we show them pictures on cards, and they react in a certain way. They get it. You know, they're communicating. They're understanding us. We've never once, and I showed that in the article, the debrief, we've never once had a question and answer with a dolphin that we could translate. So who are the dummies here?
Right.
The dolphins know what we're talking about. We cannot figure out their language. You know, it's a really complex language that has a vast number of parts to it. And we've had people working really hard at this. And no, we haven't worked it out. I think if the dolphins really, and I'm not saying this is a joke, if the dolphins really wanted to communicate with us, we'd already be talking to them.
Yeah.
And in the article, I go into some reasons that I think are not humorous or anything.
Anything
that
particular you
support
want to
that
hit on? Anything you particularly you want to hit on those arguments that support that?
Well, sure. The dolphins walked on the land 50 million years ago.
Mm.
And at that time, and the archaeological record, I linked to it in the article, they had huge brain cases at that point. They had large brains 50 million years ago.
Right.
And evolutionary biologists, I hope everybody stops laughing, because I provided documentation for all of this. Okay? Evolutionary biologists agree that animals evolved brains large enough that they need to survive. Look at the brain of a saltwater crocodile. The saltwater crocodile's brain is a little bit bigger than a large fish, but it's been an alpha predator since the time of the dinosaurs. It never needed a bigger brain. It was already on top. The only ones that had to get big brains were the ones that had to struggle to survive and be clever. Way back then, dolphins walked on the land, and they grew huge brains. Today, dolphins' brains are the largest brains of any animal measured as a percentage of their total body weight.
Mm.
They have gigantic brains, and they've had them for 50 million years. 5 million years ago, we were just coming down out of the trees. Our skulls were less than half the size that they are now. So, I don't know who had the leading edge in this race for intelligence. Why did the dolphins have such gigantic brains so long ago? And what have they been doing with them for the last 50 million years? Well, most of that time, whatever there was of us was kind of climbing around in trees and, you know, chasing bananas.
Damn, that's such an interesting point, because you think about 50 million years ago, and the fact that they, like, what I'm curious about is life was really interested in escaping the ocean.
Right.
And the fact that these animals developed these massive brains, and then not only did they escape the ocean, but decided to go back.
It's got more real estate. It's like prime real estate if you don't want to be bothered.
Ah, interesting. That's an excellent point.
And that could speak to the large brain brains, maybe they can dive deeper than we think, or did evolutionarily at one point.
Interesting. Aaron, what do you got, brother?
Well, so it's very interesting as a thought experiment. Without opposable thumbs and without recorded history, it seems as likely as the flying spaghetti monster would be in terms of describing things. So, yeah, I think it's important to keep an open mind that, it's possible that there's more than is dreamt of in our philosophy in heaven and earth. But
Horatio.
Horatio, correct. Yeah, so I don't know, I like it as an idea to expand our minds. I'm not sure I buy into the specific case of the dolphins themselves, just due to, like I said, the lack of the ability to manipulate small objects and not having any recorded history, which is critical to our ability to evolve.
Well, I of course, I covered exactly those points in the article. And first of all, Aaron will be one of the first ones against the wall when the dolphins come. But
hey, Aaron did stumble onto religion there with Pastatarian. You might have a religion
there
on
you
your
go.
hands.
Yes, Kristen, that could be it. But let's admit, I went down and kind of stretching out into the rest of the legacy of ufology that so many experiencers, if you want to believe the experiencers, say that the aliens come and they do amazing things, like they communicate without voice with their minds, and they transport people out. There's one very famous case in New York City. They can just use their minds to like levitate and transport people through walls and take them out of their dwellings, take them away, and they're not using any machinery. So they're apparently doing it telekinetically.
Which would not require opposable thumbs.
Exactly. And if you don't have opposable thumbs and you have to find a way to, because you once lived on the land and you looked up at the stars and you were wondering, you'd have to figure something out. So if you can do telekinetics and you can just manipulate things, well, then you could build starships, right? And I know what everybody's saying. I know what everybody's saying. Nobody's ever seen it. No. Yeah. But in order to come up with something like that, it would require like a massively large brain and like tens of millions of years of evolution, right? Oh, wait. That's what the dolphins have.
Jazz, I've read a lot before about the CIA, spending a bunch of money and years funding this research into trying to communicate with dolphins. The researcher to the point of having the research associate cohabiting with a dolphin for a couple months in a tank and stuff. Even though they had such a close bond, that was the theory that maybe with the close personal bond, the dolphin would start being able to communicate. And all of those experiments, were failures, at least according to the official record. I assume you addressed those. I was just curious because, I'm familiar with that stuff. So I'm wondering what you think on that.
They probably wanted them to carry bombs.
You didn't read that part of the article. I addressed that exactly. Yeah. The dolphins are really rapey. They're always trying to have sex with human females in pools where they do testing. Why? Is it maybe part of their hybrid program? Come along with me a little bit.
I'm coming along. We're coming along for the experiment.
Just for that, but our failure to communicate with the dolphins in the fashion we thought we were going to, is that because the dolphins are too dumb? Or is that because we're looking at a language that we haven't been able to parse? Because the dolphins do seem to understand us. I already said that. But we don't understand them. And that was one of the questions, hypothetically, that I posed in the article. Who's the real dummy here? We've been working on this for more than a century. We've had people in pools working with them. A couple of women actually having sex with them, just trying to get in there, get the information, and establish a dialogue. Does that mean the dolphins are stupid, or we're not smart enough to figure it out? I'm sorry, I'm not smart enough to give you the answer to that question.
But maybe the dolphins are.
government has done as much work as you might have heard, because our unnamed buddy, unnamed, consulted with the government agency in regards to how they navigate in the water to help with navigation. So I don't think they have a whole lot of knowledge.
The government.
The government, yeah.
Right.
If they're still consulting with people.
Well, I thought the
They're
reason why
consulting.
those dolphin experiments failed is because the guys who were running the experiments were also doing LSD, and they ended up just doing too much LSD, and that's why the experiment failed.
Did it work?
Yeah, that's. I mean, who knows? It might work. Maybe if they tried a different,
They also
today.
gave the dolphins LSD.
They also gave the dolphins LSD.
Did they really?
Yes, they did.
Yes.
They
Oh,
did.
that's mean.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
but it didn't
fascinating.
seem to affect the dolphins that much. The dolphins were still like, they would go look in mirrors and do things, and that I know that study, and I wrote about it when I wrote about this is a previous article a while back. It wasn't about dolphins being in UFOs. It was just about I wrote an article for the debrief that was centered entirely on if we meet extraterrestrials, would we be able to figure out how to communicate with them? Could they communicate with us? And one of the examples that I cited was our tremendous efforts over a century to try to establish communication with the dolphins, which have, I'm sorry, utterly failed. We have some things where you can hold up cards and the dolphins will respond, but there's never once been a case where we were able to emulate the dolphin language and ask a question and get an answer that we could translate. It's never happened.
Interesting.
And the dolphins seem to be really comfortable with everything that's going on, and they're like, "Hey, you got the fish," and they seem to be pretty cool with everything, and we're the ones that are going, "What are you saying with these squeaks and clicks?" And I asked the question in the article that we're all talking about right now: who's the real dummy here?
Right.
Is it the dolphins, or are we just not able to put the pieces together?
Right.
So I think we're not giving the dolphins enough credit. And as I said, we started out with the premise. We've been evolving a large brain for 3.5 million years. The dolphins, 50. So I'm sorry, is it that crazy of an? I'm not saying this is the reality, but I'm just saying, if you want to argue that there are aliens coming from Zeta Reticuli, well, I can come up with an argument for the dolphins with absent any proof. It's probably as good as any of your arguments, in some cases possibly better.
Right. No, I think it's fascinating. So what inspired you to ultimately get into this line of thinking? Was it you were researching this for a while, and then as you started to get interested in the UAP phenomenon, you're like, what's an interesting argument here? Like, how did you get into that?
It was largely you and Lou, because I had, before the Big Phone Home 1, I had already been writing about this. I'd been writing about dolphin intelligence. I'd been writing about interspecies communication, plant communication. The idea, I've written articles about, do plants have some sort of intellect, some sort of collective intelligence, and the way they communicate with each other? These are really interesting questions to me, and there's been a lot of research done on it. And then by the time the Big Phone Home came around, we were talking about we need to communicate with the aliens. And at that moment, that was when it hit me. And I was like, yeah, it's probably dolphins, and it probably isn't dolphins. But I would argue that if you want to say, well, it's little grays from Zeta Reticuli, I've actually got dolphins here.
Right.
Show me a little gray.
Right.
Okay, let's put that up against each other. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
And I think what I'm trying to do is highlight the fact that we are debating important topics, and they are important topics about intelligence, but more than that, about consciousness, about the nature of reality, about how things interact with each other. Is there non-animal intelligence, plants, things like that? I think these are all fascinating questions, and I think they do tie into the actual subject that is being debated. It's like, are these extraterrestrial visitors? As I said at the very end of the article, I still think that's probably the highest probability answer, but we don't know until somebody produces reproducible evidence, wheel out a body, give us something. We don't know what it is. And there's an old premise in science that if you can't provide any proof, well, then you have to go back and try to find some, right? So I don't know what to tell you. I mean, you can say, oh, it's little grays from Zeta Reticuli, it's the reptilians. And I would come back to you in my own entire argument. I'm not saying it is dolphins, but I can say that, well, I went and spent a lot of time this week and proposed an argument where I can say, you say it's little grays from Zeta Reticuli. I've got at least as good of an argument that it's dolphins.
Right.
I don't know that it is. There's
right.
no evidence that it's dolphins. I want to be clear.
What about the sightings of grays that people have had, like Lonnie Zamora and such, versus and the children at the aerial school in Zimbabwe, versus seeing sightings of dolphins?
Sure. How many people do you think saw the sighting at school? Let's add up all the sightings of all the people who said they have seen alien grays. I can find you 5 billion people that have seen dolphins. I guarantee you they're real.
Not stepping out of spaceships, but...
No, but we have... Do you have any video of them stepping out of spaceships? I have a ton of video of dolphins, dude. They are real. They are here. They are trying to have sex with women. They are doing all sorts of things, and they're around all the time. Show me that actually extraterrestrials on this planet are real. I will show you dolphins on this planet are real, and they have been real since before we came out of the trees.
And they've had bigger brains since we became out of the trees.
Brains.
Right.
I think this ties in perfectly with the Hessdalen research, because it's a very similar argument that you're making, where we know dolphins do exist, so maybe it's a better argument than something that we don't really have evidence for existing. The Hessdalen phenomena have been studied for, 40 years if you include all of the original work by Professor Erling Strand. And at this point, we can definitively say, based on the amount of empirical data they've collected, that these objects do exist. And there's a variety of them. And a number of those varieties conform very closely to what we identify as UAPs on a global scale. There's research that shows that these are a global phenomena. So in the general UFO UAP conversation, I think there's a case to be made that the Hessdalen phenomena are the thing that we should be pointing to, because they give definitive evidence that there are extraordinary physical objects moving around in Earth's atmosphere that don't have a known origin or explanation currently available. So, it's very similar. And I'm very curious about your Tic Tac experience, because in 2004, these researchers actually photographed a series of photos of a Tic Tac in the air, simultaneously tracked on radar. I have a link to a 1.5-minute section of a video showing the actual literal object that is in a white ellipsoid in the atmosphere from 2004, these researchers. So I'm curious about your experience, because there's evidence that scientists have produced that these objects, Tic Tacs, are physically in our atmosphere right now. And the place to find them, based on all the available evidence consistently, they've been occurring since the 80s consistently, is Hessdalen.
I'd love for you, if you could do me a favor, if you want me to share that, if you want to send it to me in a Twitter DM, and then we can watch it together. But as you do that, I do want to go ahead and quickly reset the room. We've only got about 20 or so minutes left here, but I definitely really appreciate this conversation. And for those of you who haven't been over to the debrief today to check out Jazz's new article, make sure you do that. It's a really interesting thought experiment about how we observe or look at the prospect of UAPs, and if we are, potentially, biased in our outlook, and how we can look at it in a whole new perspective. So I really appreciate, Jazz, that you wrote the article, because I think it really does a great job of kind of interestingly reframing this question and how we even approach the conversation. And we've also got Aaron Desario here with us today, who's a science technology enthusiast. He's a pioneer in the digital photo organization realm. He co-invented and received a patent for iPhoto. And we've also got Campbell Moriera here. He's a UAP enthusiast and small business owner in Ontario, Canada. You've got me, you've got my lovely wife, Kristen, and we've got Luis from the Unidentified Celebrity Review. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. But yeah, I'd love to share that, and we can go through that, Campbell, as well.
Sent it.
Okay, great.
Can I answer his question?
Yes,
Yeah,
please do.
Oh, yeah, and now you've reset the room and totally distracted me. But I know we discussed some of the people on this show and people who know me. I didn't go out publicly and talk about the Tic Tac thing last month. It was in June, and we don't have the time to go through the whole thing. But yeah, I had my third remarkable observation in this phenomenon last month. And
I didn't know that.
I did put it in the group chat back in June.
You did. I missed
Yes.
it. Go ahead, please.
Anyway, short version, I was out on my back deck at my house. The front porch faces to the east, the back faces to the west. I was out on the back. I have a deck. I was out there. And in the middle of June, on a very, very pleasant day with a lot of blue sky, but some cumulus clouds, fluffy cumulus clouds, not the really high cirrus clouds or the low oppressive, storm clouds or anything up there. And it was a nice day. And there were two planes that were coming from the regional airport that we live about 40 miles away from. 737s that were heading from east to west, because the only planes that leave from the regional airport go to Detroit, and then you get your connection to wherever. And I always happen to watch them, And as they were going over, I was standing there. It was such a nice day, and I was looking up. And then I saw something else that was down well lower than them. And instead of going east to west, it was going west to east.
Mm.
And it was smaller than them, but it was white, and it very clearly didn't have any wings. And it was just moving along. It was, to my perception, moving even slower than the 737s that head out of our regional airport, but just moving across the sky. That all took a couple of seconds before I registered that, and I was like, holy shit, I'm looking at a Tic Tac. It had no wings. It had no contrail. I turned around on my back deck and realized at that moment that my phone was not in my pocket because it was at 15% and it was recharging in the den. And I turned around and crashed through the back door. And I'm going to reveal some embarrassing stuff that my wife is watching right now. I crashed through the back door and started screaming at my wife, grab your phone, grab your camera, get out front. And I ran in and I grabbed my phone and ripped the recharging cord out of it and ran out onto the front deck. And we stood out there and I looked and it was gone. The planes were still there, but the thing that I watched trekking across the sky was gone.
Holy shit.
And she didn't see it. And I have a good 16 minutes of video of blank sky. After that, I went into sort of a spiraling session that I have not discussed publicly, where I started turning into Richard Dreyfuss from Close Encounters, building the mashed potato thing, because I was like, maybe they were there because the other two planes I saw were going over, and that's something they were tracking. And then I'm on Google, and I'm over on the website for the airport. What time did the flights leave? Mm-hmm. And my wife just needs me to get our life along. And I'm out there like, the planes are going to be over shortly. I have to look and see if the Tic Tac comes back. And I was out there with the camera ready all the time, and the Tic Tac never came back. But the fact is, when I crashed through the door and went in and grabbed my camera, I've timed this several times because I was in the Richard Dreyfuss mode. It took at a maximum 5 seconds for me to go through the back door of our 3-story colonial house, through the kitchen, through the short entry hall, grab my phone, get outside. Maximum of 5 seconds. I watched the Tic Tac go lower than the planes that I had originally been watching because they went behind the clouds. The Tic Tac went below the clouds. And it was apparently slower than the planes. Maybe it was doing a good clip, but it was moving across the sky. I'm going to guess as an amateur 150, maybe 200 miles an hour. Large expanse of sky to watch. Takes a while to get over that. Screaming for my wife to grab her phone and run outside, and she thought the house was on fire until we got out front. Out front is facing east, and we should have seen the Tic Tac continuing on, going east. There's nothing there. The planes were still out there. You could see them to the west. The Tic Tac was gone. It had disappeared. So nobody saw it but me. The 2 UFO events my wife and I had last November, we talked about those and we put them up on YouTube because we filmed them. I did not get any film of this, so I didn't put out in public because I got nothing but a story like everybody else. And unlike the other 2, I don't even, my wife is, I was the only one who saw it. But you know what? It made me realize, and that's what we're doing on vacation right now, is spending a lot of time looking at the sky. If I hadn't noticed those planes, I could have been sitting there playing an online game of cribbage on my phone, which I often do.
Yeah.
It would have silently gone by. And it's like, how many times have I been staring at my phone or focusing on something else and something happened and I just missed it? And that encounter, I just wanted to share that with everybody. When we're going on vacation up to camp the day after tomorrow, I'm going to be spending a lot of time with her, and both of us have been doing it, just staring at the sky. Because how many times does something remarkable happen and we're so just obsessed with our own screens and our own things? And that could all be going. I could have missed 1,000 of these.
Kids look at the sky all the time, but we never believe them.
Right.
Great point.
Well,
but I just wanted to say that because I'm not making any, and I know I try to do a lot of humor, even though I'm probably not all that funny when I come on the show. This is entirely serious. This is what we're doing right now. Because I've come to realize after that Tic Tac thing, it's like, how many of these did I miss? 2, 5, 100?
Right.
It could be going on all the time. So we are trying to spend more time, literally, as Christine always says, keeping your eyes on the skies. And we're going up to a place that has no light pollution. It's up near the border of Canada in the mountains. There's no background light. The skies are gorgeous. And I'm going to be fishing, but I'll be watching the skies. And at night, we're going to be out there. No phones, no nothing. Just sitting there watching and waiting to film something. So that's my vacation plans. So if that helps answer the original question that was asked, that's what I wanted to share with you, because this is important to me. And that thing last month with the Tic Tac, I mean, it really opened my eyes.
That's incredible, Jess. I really appreciate you sharing that with us. And I know that in the behind the scenes, Aaron, you said you had a similar experience. So I'd love to hear that. And then we've also got the video to show, and then we've got Artemis to come in and give us our poll results. So we've got all 3 of those things to do in the next 12 minutes. So I'm going to share this video screen real quick. You guys got my screen?
The big phone home too.
Oh, and we've got the big phone home too to talk about. Okay, so is this correct, Campbell?
Yes, that's the post I put up. It's I've been having people contact me talking very similar to what Jazz is saying. This is why it's so important. It provides evidence for people who are eyewitnesses, people who are treated poorly when they say these things. This video, if Jazz sees it, he will see there is a photograph of a Tic Tac simultaneously taken on radar by university professors and federal government scientists in Europe. And I can't even explain how much evidence there is. It's stunning.
Should I put the volume on, or no, just leave it?
Yeah, I mean, the audio is interesting. I'll stop talking. We just see it.
Okay.
Det som hendte da, var det at det så ut som det var et slags tett objekt. Det kunne se ut som en kall det metallisk sky. som plutselig oppstod på et sted.
This is 2009 it was released.
Og så flytta det seg, og 5 ganger så klarte vi å ta bilde av.
And these are the scientists and researchers in the valley?
That's Bjorn Haug, assistant professor, Østfold University College, master's in electrical engineering. He's one of the many researchers that are doing this project continuously for the last 20 years, and then others have been doing it for another, I guess, since '84. The evidence is extremely compelling. Anybody who has ever had an eyewitness experience will be validated if we can promote this evidence. Their university, and here's the tic-tac. Wait for it. Look at that.
Wow.
That's a real photo of a tic-tac object flying through Earth's atmosphere, simultaneously captured on radar.
Way closer than mine. I will say mine was a bit further away, much closer than the planes. And like I said, it might have been as long as a bus from what I could tell from the angle, but that's a lot closer than mine.
Has anybody here ever seen a real photo of a tic-tac object flying through Earth's atmosphere? Taken by scientists. It blew my mind, and I can't underline enough how important this information is. And it's called, and look at this, it broke apart. They photographed 5 sequences, and then it shoots blue spiraling beams out of it, and they photograph them ricocheting off of treetops. It's unimaginable, except it is verified university research. It's so important to me that eyewitnesses get this validation that they've been missing for so long. You know, that's the reason that Dr. Hynek and Dr. Valet, they've both said, and Professor Strand from Project Hesdalen have always all said that eyewitness validation is the core driver for them. This provides eyewitnesses, you point at that photo, and it's like, I saw that, there's a photo by scientists. It's real.
What about, is this a recreation here, or is this an actual photo?
That's a recreation from, they have a series of about half a dozen to a dozen eyewitnesses who describe exactly seeing ellipsoid, metallic, structured objects in this valley going back at least to the 80s. And they all seen the same things. And then after Professor Strand has produced this evidence, that's empirical data on simultaneously on multiple sensor systems and triangulated with multiple different research stations. Witnesses started coming forward from the valley, talking about their experiences. 80-year-olds coming forward, finally for the first time, acknowledging that they've seen these objects. One individual they interview in 2006 described seeing a tic-tac that year, exactly a tic-tac. I don't know what to make of it. That's why I made my website, UAP Study, so that people can go through it on their own time. I didn't believe it at first. I was on my own time and came back to it over and over. And finally, after, it's the one UFO phenomenon that doesn't resolve itself after you investigate it more and more. It just becomes more and more shocking and inexplicable.
Well, this is what's fascinating too, and I really appreciate you connecting me with Massimo and having him on the show, and I look forward to digging into this more deeply. But one of the fascinating things that I think Jazz brought up earlier was as Americans, we're so enraptured in our own bubble that we often, there's language barriers, there's social and cultural barriers, and then you look at something like this and you go, oh, it looks like another Discovery Channel, like whatever, right? We get so wrapped up. But if that was Avi Loeb talking on that camera, you better believe Americans would believe it. And just because this is a Norwegian scientist, it's very easy to dismiss because of our ignorance bubble.
Well, that's an amazing video, by the way, and I just want to say, even if my phone wasn't charging when I saw the tic-tac and I ran out and I got a perfect cell phone capture of it, everybody would immediately, Mick West would come in and go, oh, seagull, whatever, because it was up in the air pretty good ways and it was just moving along stately, in the sky. And I ran outside and disappeared and it was gone. Really nothing to go on. That's some really good video. So thank you.
Yeah. In my own experience, I didn't even bother with the camera because I knew that it would be a pointless picture. So instead, though, I keep binoculars handy nearby at all times. So at least I can see it for myself when it comes back, and I hope it does.
And so you've had an experience. You've seen a tic-tac as well, Aaron?
Yeah, I was sitting here at my desk, and I was looking out a window. And like Jazz said, it was a day with fluffy clouds that were nearby. And we also have an airport nearby where planes are constantly landing. It's actually a very busy airport. And up there, kind of hanging out next to the cloud, like it was trying to be all stealthy, was this Tic Tac. It was oriented vertically from what we're used to seeing instead of horizontally. But it was very clearly defined. It was not part of the cloud. It was a solid object that looked like it could have been made out of metal or something to that effect. It was about, as he said, maybe the size of a bus, probably a quarter to a third the size of a 737.
Right.
A good
That was
distance
my
away
reaction.
from me, but not too far. I'd say maybe half a mile. Maybe, somewhere around a half a mile away. Like I said, a picture from a phone would have been completely nothing. It would have been a dot.
Totally useless. Yeah.
Yeah.
But like I said, we're heading up to camp, and we're going to be in a zero light pollution area. And unlike previous years, my wife and I are going to be up there this weekend. For anybody who wants to know, we do have Wi-Fi access. If I see anything, I will post it. I don't have a pay channel. If I get anything, I'll post it immediately. But yeah, we're going to be spending a lot of our evenings, and even during the day when we're out fishing, just watching the skies, because it's one of the most clear sky areas in the eastern half of the United States, up near the Canadian border. And it is close to a couple of military bases, so it draws some interesting activity.
That's
just like Jazz. I saw it for a couple of minutes. I called my daughter, went out to grab the binoculars, and my daughter, by the time we got back, poof,
and it's gone. That's the part I didn't even tell, and I don't want to take up the whole show, but I told you about how I crashed through the back door, right, and went out front. I went and, because I was going into that close encounters thing, I went out and started testing how long it would take for a plane to drive to the point where we couldn't, or fly to the point where we couldn't see it anymore. My wife was really getting worried at a point, and she watches the show, and she'll tell you when you talk to her. I was really going all Richard Dreyfuss, but I tested it, and it was moving along at a speed where when I came out the front of the house, I should have been easily able to see it for up to anywhere from 7 to 10 more seconds before it went over the horizon. It had just disappeared. And that's one of the reasons the people that have questioned me saying, oh, it's just a plane. Well, there are two planes. The Tic Tac was gone. It disappeared.
The scientists in Hessdalen
dozens of planes every day over my house
at 6 miles a second on radar. And that is the exact speed that Kevin Day reports at 28,000 feet to sea level in 0.78 seconds. It is the same exact speed that Hessdalen researchers track these objects going.
Wow.
But if it did that, it did it when I was going through the house grabbing my phone, because it was very clear on my back deck. And when I ran out front, the planes were there. It was gone.
It's gone. It's
I
fascinating.
see planes every day. I know what those look like. This was not a plane.
Right.
Neither was mine.
All right. Yeah, go ahead, Louis.
I was going to say one quick question for Camel. Do you know if that Norwegian study has, if there's been a peer-reviewed paper written or anything like that has been submitted to, a greater scientific coalition?
There are a number of publications. The most prominent one is 2004, after the Italian research team went for 4 years and did periodic studies. Dr. Stelio Montebenoli, senior engineer at the Italian National Physics, it's the federal government body. His paper, 2004, I've got a link to on my website.
Okay.
Excellent. And we're going to point people to your website as we wrap up the show. But I want to bring Artemis Prime in because she's going to share the results of our poll today. Artemis. Oop. There she is.
Oh. Hi.
Oh, hold on. Here we go.
There
we go. Artemis, share with us what the poll was and what we found out.
Okay. So the poll today was, has the Hesdalen UAP phenomena, is it extraterrestrial, natural plasma, or who cares, it's obviously Norway?
And what were our results?
50% said extraterrestrial, 29% said natural plasma, and 21% said who cares, it's Norway.
It's Norway. See,
Yeah.
this is exactly...
I voted for Norway, by the way.
So did I.
I mean,
Just so you know.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Artemis Prime. If you guys are not following Artemis Prime, by the way, on Twitter, Artemis, how can people follow you?
It is, I couldn't get Artemis Prime. There's a lot of people with that username. So it's just Artemis Koskinen, Koskinen.
Fantastic.
And that's on every platform.
Excellent. Instagram, Twitter.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Probably not Facebook. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't bother with Facebook.
Don't bother with Facebook.
No.
Amazing. Kooky appreciates the poll results. Thank you, Kooky. And thank you, Artemis, for making that happen for us. Amazing show today. Thank you all for joining us. We really appreciate your time. Hopefully, we can have Campbell, this is your first time on the show. Definitely want to have you back. We got a lot more to talk about. But if you could share with folks where they can find you, where they can find your website, Instagram, Twitter, wherever you want to send people, I'd love for them to follow you.
Just my website is uapstudy.com. No ads or anything. I'm not making any money off this. I'm not trying to. And then my other primary thing is Reddit. Reddit.com/user/WELOHELO.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us today, Campbell. We're going to have you back again real soon.
Yeah, I'll be in touch very soon. I can't wait. I can't wait to have that guy on my show.
Yeah, fantastic. Aaron Desario, thank you so much for joining us today. Aaron, can you tell people if they want to follow you on Twitter, if they want to follow you on social media, how they can do that?
Sure. I'm at Desario, Disario on Twitter. Very similar on Facebook. I think it might be A Desario there, Facebook/A Desario. And I'm just a guy who likes to chat about this.
Aaron, where are you moving to?
I am moving from San Jose to a place on the fringe of the Bay Area called Antioch.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Interesting.
That sounds
Very
nice.
Good. All right. Well, we're going to catch you up. When are you moving?
I'm moving this weekend, so you'll see me on the other side.
Fantastic. Well, I look forward to seeing you on the other side.
Can't wait to see that new garage.
Yeah. Where's that new garage your wife lets you podcast in?
Yeah. Later.
I think we have a nice office for it, so it'll look pretty good, I bet.
Great.
Well, congratulations on the new place.
Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron. Bye-bye. All right. Jazz Shaw, can you share with folks where they can read the article and where they can follow you on social media?
Yeah, I don't really do any monetized channels, so I appreciate everybody who wants to read or do whatever, but you can follow me at thedebrief.org. And most of my work shows up on Twitter. I'm just Jazz Shaw, on Twitter. But mostly, I would encourage everybody to not worry about me. I have a full-time job. I try to get out there and get you and encourage you to follow Michael and Luis. Follow the people who are going to be pushing the Big Phone Home 2. Support this channel. Support both their channels. Try, if you have the ability, and I realize not everybody does, try to do some monetary support. Keep this thing going. Big Phone Home 1 was a huge success in my opinion, and I think it influenced a lot that went on in Washington, and I think we can multiply that next time. So don't worry about me. Take care of these guys.
Thank you, Jazz. We really appreciate you, brother.
Well said.
All right.
Cut him off.
Man. Amazing. Oh, and for those of you who don't know, if you're interested in following the Unidentified Celebrity Review or the Singularity Lab, you can find both on Apple Podcast. You can find them both on Spotify now. So we just got Singularity Lab up on Spotify and Apple Podcasts in the last couple of days. If you can't afford to support the show financially, please make sure you go on Apple and leave us a review. Every 5-star review helps us get in front of more listeners. The longer your comment, the better. Share with people what you think, what you want to see from the show. And you can always hit us up on Twitter at Singularity Mike and at Lou Angeles. That's that. Oh, and let's talk about the Big Phone Home 2.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we just released the poster. I'm still memorizing the dates. The dates are going to be the September 4th, 5th, and 6th. So Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Labor Day weekend. We've got a lot of fun guests lined up. We've already got Avi Loeb, who committed to us. Hopefully we'll get some more scientists and academics for our Singularity Lab Science Sunday day. And yeah, I mean, you know, it's begun where the work is now starting to happen. Hopefully we're going to have our website up by next week. And then that's when you're going to see a lot of movement from our side of things, especially.
Yeah, it's going to be dope. Yeah, that's all I got. So thank you guys so much for joining us today for the Singularity Lab. Thank you, Luis, Kristen, and Artemis Prime for being here and supporting the show. You guys all rule. We couldn't do it without you. So without further ado, adios.
Ciao.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.